Good evening. Welcome to the May 13th Committee of the Whole Subcommittee. Please rise to salute the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call of the members. Councilor Argenzio.
Here.
Here. Councilor Janino.
Here.
Here. Councilor Guarino-Sawaya.
Here.
Here. Councilor Haas.
Here.
Here. Councilor Jaramillo is absent. Councilor Kelly.
Here.
Here. Councilor McKenna.
Here.
Here. Councilor Novoselsky is absent. Councilor Silvestri.
Here.
Here. Councilor Zambudo.
Here.
Here. And Council President Cogliandro.
Here.
Here. A quorum is present. There's one matter on this evening's agenda. Tom O'Brien from HYM will address the City Council relative to the ongoing Suffolk Downs development.
Good evening, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Thomas O'Brien, 110 Sudbury Street, Boston, Massachusetts.
Thank you very much. I know that some of the council is going to have questions about the project. I didn't know if you had anything that you wanted to share with us before we got into the Q&A portion.
Sure, I could start, if that's okay with you, just for a couple of minutes to give people an
Absolutely.
update. Is that all right? We're proud to be here again this evening to kind of appear before you and give you an update on Suffolk Downs. I'm happy to do this, anytime. As you folks know, happy to give you an update at any time. But I think really what I wanted to kind of start with is, we acquired the site in 2017. And in the time since then, we have, together with a group of investors, raised and spent over $550 million of capital on the site, so over $500 million on the site. The breakdown basically on that is the first new building that we're delivering on the site is now being completed even as we speak, so the first units will be delivering in the month of June. That building was about a $250 million building. And then another $300 million through a combination of site acquisition together with infrastructure investment. So we've invested millions and millions of dollars in infrastructure and in the site. And you'll see evidence of that when we have the ribbon cutting for the new building. All of you would be invited to this. We haven't set the date on that yet, but all of you will be invited to that. But you'll see roads, water, sewer, parks, all those things have gone into it. In addition to that, we've also invested in a new outdoor music venue as well. So remember, our purpose here is to take a horse track that basically was abandoned when we purchased it. The horse racing was obviously on them, kind of coming to the end. And so we've taken an abandoned horse racing track, and our objective is to try and bring people to the site as quickly as we can. So we have a concert venue. The first of those concerts is this Saturday. The Evett Brothers, I think. I'm sorry, it's for 23-year-old members of my staff. They know the group. I'm sorry, I don't know the groups. I apologize. If it's not Bruce Springsteen, I'm not sure I know who it is. But they'll be here on Saturday. And we sold out 4 shows last year. The venue holds 8,500 people. So we had 4 shows last year very successfully, and we want to repeat that again this year. So we feel good about where we are. I think it's no secret that there have been challenges in the economy this year. Interest rates went up significantly since the beginning of 2023, which has affected everybody. But we have our next building designed and ready to go. We spent probably close to $10 million on the pre-development of that building, completing the design and the rest. We actually have advanced where the building permit is sort of ready. It's here. We've applied for the building permit here with the city. We'll pull that building permit as soon as we get costs lined up on that project. And so we're working now with the various members of the team to get costs lined up. But that project will start this year. We have financing in place for that. We just have to get the costs lined up for that project. So those, Councilor, are really the key updates, I think, and I'm happy to answer people's questions.
Thank you very much. The 2 makers of the motion, I'm going to have them speak first. I don't know which one. Councilor McKenna?
Thank you. Thank you, Tom, for being up here. The reason why we brought this to fruition is because we were hearing rumors that the site wasn't doing well. And so to stop the rumors and just to clarify everything that's going on, we wanted you to come up here and just talk about that. So And I know Michelle, Councilor Kelly wants to talk about that too, so I'm going to put it over to her, but that's why we called you up here. Thank
Sure.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Kelly.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien, for being here tonight. So really, my reasoning for having you come in is, yes, some of the rumors, but more importantly, we have to vote on bonding for the new high school on May 20th. And in a presentation made by Mr. Viskey, the city's CFO, in January 2023, we were told that over the course of a 20-year span, we could expect $40 million in revenue from the project at Suffolk Downs. And most importantly, how rapidly this development progresses will be the key factor in the city's ability to finance the new high school. Therefore, my biggest concern, before we take a vote on bonding for the new high school on May 20th, is whether the project is still progressing at the original projections that were proposed. Is it still on schedule as originally planned?
So we purchased the site, as I said, in 2017, and we've expended $550 million together with a group of investors, obviously, on the site to date. So over the course of a 20-year pace, we certainly anticipated that there would be occasional recessions during that period. Just think about our own history as a nation. Every 10 or 12 years or so, there's a recession. I will tell you that from a commercial real estate perspective, commercial real estate is in recession right now. So if you look at in the city of Boston and many other cities, there are very few new starts of commercial buildings or large residential buildings. But we have a building that we're delivering right now. So we have a building that began in the fall of 2022 that's delivering right now. We have the next building in which we've spent, $10 million, as I said, to design and prepare and get that building in the ground. We're working with the various stakeholders to get the costs on that building lined up to make sure that it can start. We would like to start that building this year. We intend to start that building this year. The objective is to build the site as fast as we possibly can to bring people to the site. So, for example, we have restaurants that will populate the first floor of the building that we're delivering right now. There's 9 different retail slots in that building, and we have 7 letters of intent for different retail entities, restaurants, food, some exercise facilities, things like that, to fill in those slots. So what we're trying to do is create a place where people want to be. I can assure you, Counselor, that we acquired the site together with a group of very stable investors. Having spent $550 million so far on the site, nobody's walking away from this, and nobody wants to slow it down. But we do exist in a capital environment where interest rates have gone up by 100 basis points, 200 basis points. You pick the spread, and it's made it more difficult, more challenging, but we feel like things are improving, and we anticipated that there would be some swings along the way over the 20-year period.
So I appreciate your answer, but so are you on track then? Are you on
Yes.
course of
Yes.
this 20-year period that
Yes.
you believe that you are?
Yes.
Okay. And if interest rates stay the same, do you think that's going to continue to have a negative impact on progress?
Well, what ends up happening, I don't think interest rates will stay the same. I don't think they'll go back to where they were. We had, at different points, people could get a home mortgage for 3%, at a different point. Today, that's not possible. Home mortgage today is probably up around 7 or even 8%, right? So it's just not possible today. I don't think that interest rates will go back to that 3% level. I think that they will come down. They won't be at the current level, I don't think, for another year or so. I think they'll come down a little bit. So I do think that interest rates will come down, which will help us. But the truth is, at the same time that that's happening, we need to adjust costs. So the beauty of this site is the size of it. So we can create an opportunity to take advantage of the economies of the scale of the site to pre-purchase 10,000 doors, pre-purchase 10,000 light fixtures, all those things. And that's the objective for us right now, to continue with that investment.
And of the 4 phases of the project, only Phase 1 is underway right now, correct?
Correct.
And what is the percentage of completion on Phase 1?
So we're delivering the first building. So Phase 1, if I recall correctly, I think there's it's like 1.7 million square feet of total development. The first building is being completed right now. So that building is probably, I'm going to say 300,000 square feet or so of that. We have an agreement with a hotel developer that will take up the next piece. And the next building is another, call it 350,000 square feet approximately. Actually, I'm sorry, let me take that back. First building is about 500,000 square feet, I'm sorry. The next building is probably another 500,000 square feet. And we have, as I said, designed and ready to go, that building. So probably the first 1 million square feet will be delivered in the next fully 24 months.
So you think, in percentages, how far along are you in that phase?
So I would say right now, we've designed or have in the ground well over 50% of that first phase.
Okay. And the word in certain construction materials circles
Yes.
that supply construction materials is that two projects, namely R3 and R11. R3 is cited for 440 residential units with 33,000 square feet of retail space, and R11 is approximately 251,000 square feet of biolab. That materials for those two specific buildings are on hold until at least April 2025. Is that correct?
No, not correct. R3 that's the one that I'm describing, which is designed. That's actually 473 units. That's fully designed and ready to go. The architects, all the team is ready to go. We're working with various members of both the trades as well as, suppliers to be sure that we have costs lined up. We need costs to line up on that project. We need people to meet what they've agreed to on their side of the obligations to get the costs lined up on that. If we get the costs lined up, we have the capital raised and ready to go on that building. So that building will begin this year. On R11, which is a life science building, that building is next to the building that we're completing right now. We dug the hole for that building. We ordered the steel for that building. We spent a ton of money on that. We probably spent, $20 to $25 million on that building. But the life science business changed drastically this year. And so it used to be, when we started that building, it used to be that the key to that business was to build a building on spec, in other words, without a tenant. And that market shifted quite a bit. And so we did put that on pause for now. But we spent a ton of money on it. Nobody's walking away from that. And our intention is to fill that with a tenant. And I spend a lot of time, my own personal time, trying to work with the tenant. That's the key to the site, is to bring people to the site with the retail, the music, the residential, all that, make it a place that's no longer an abandoned horse racing track. Then once we get that, then we'll be able to get a life science company into this city that will make a big difference in the creation of commercial property taxes.
So you don't see the delay on that life science building impacting at all the $40 million in revenue that the city is expected to get within a 20-year span?
I think over the course of 20, if you're asking me over the course of 20 years, are we going to get a life science building? We're going to get that building underway? Absolutely. I can sit here and tell you that. The question is, can we begin it in 24, right? And that's the objective, is to try and get that lined up. The issue is things change, the circumstances changed. When interest rates went up in 23, the circumstances in that market changed.
Right.
So for example, in the city of Boston and the city of Cambridge, which are the heart and soul of the life science market, I believe there have been no new starts, just in that space.
Right.
So for us, where we're trying to make a site, we're trying to make it a place where people would be attracted, a new site, that's that much harder. We have to hit a harder bar to do that. So our objective is build the retail, build the residential, build the music place, make it a place where people want to be. This is the time to do that.
Okay. And do you have a general contractor under contract with you right now?
We do. Moriarty is building the building that we're delivering right now. And then we've elected to switch our general contractor on our next building. And we're working with Suffolk Construction on that, which is the largest general contractor in the region.
Okay. And so do you have any type of a time frame for phases 2 through 4 right now?
Phases 2 through 4, oh, so the next phases you mean after that? Basically, we would try and begin those as quickly as we could after phase 1. So if we could, we would build it all as fast as we possibly can. The problem is, the issue is the absorption of both the residential buildings and the absorption of the commercial spaces. But remember, part of what we're doing here is we're spending money on the site in infrastructure and parks and the like. So having spent now $550 million, nobody's walking away from this. Our objective is to build it as fast as we can. This is a huge investment for everybody, and our intention is to build this out.
When you've said no one's walking away from this, have you walked away from projects in the past that
No.
haven't been completed?
I can't think of anything in my career that I've ever honestly, I can't think of anything in my life that I've ever walked away from. Honestly, Counselor, hopefully we'll get to know one another, but you will know that I am a person who never, ever quits on anything.
So the projects that HYM starts, they complete? They come to fruition and completion?
Yeah, I don't know if this is a question you're asking me on something, I can't think of anything that we've not yet completed. There are things, the next phases of other projects that we have to finance and build, yes. But we've completed everything that we're obligated to complete, that's for
Okay.
sure.
All right, thank you so much, appreciate it.
Yep.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Silvestri.
Thank you, Tom, for taking the time to come up. Tom, can you give us a timeline on the hotel?
Yeah, so essentially what needs to happen is we need to get the R3 project, which we call Portico, underway. Once we get that project underway, then in the phasing of this, then what we're trying to do is get to the next piece, which is a block that exists on the other side of the park where Portico will be built. And that park will include both a smaller residential building and the hotel. So we're trying to get this building in the ground this year so we can get to, hopefully next year, getting these next two in the ground as quickly as possible.
And
The
you,
hotel doesn't want to begin until we've started to close out that block, that piece. And the hotel obviously wants to open without a building being built right next door to it. That's the challenge. The hotel would build, they would love to go tomorrow, but in the phasing of this, we need to get these first two buildings underway.
and it benefits you as much as it benefits us to finish this project in a timely manner, right?
Yeah, if we're not working, I mean, just the model of our business, as you know, is we have these sites, and we go out and we raise the capital to build the buildings. So the capital comes from large institutional investors. It doesn't come from, it's not in a safe back at HYM. So we have to go to a life insurance company, a pension fund, whoever that is, to capitalize these projects. And if we can't capitalize these projects and we're not working, then we don't get paid. So the way my business works is we are absolutely incentivized to build these buildings as quickly as possible.
And how much work has been done on the Boston side of
So
HYM?
we've spent a ton of money, again, on infrastructure and the like, on the Boston side to set up water, sewer, electrical, all those different pieces. But our focus right now is on the Revere side to get this piece lined up. The Revere piece honestly lines up very well. We spent more money on infrastructure. We purchased, Beachmont roast beef. We're in the middle of redoing Winthrop Ave. We installed all the water, sewer, all the electrical. We upgraded the electrical, with National Grid and those folks. So there's been a ton of money spent on the Revere side, and that's our short-term focus is to get Revere, completed as quickly as possible.
Thank you for your time tonight, Tom.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Argenzio.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you, Mr. O'Brien, for coming. Previous councilors have asked several questions that I was going to ask. The music venue, is that going to be a permanent part of this facility, or is that just a short-term?
So as we build the site out, the music venue is going to have to change a little bit just because we built it out, so it will end up being the central space in the park that we'll create.
Mm-hmm.
So the music venue, we've signed a 10-year agreement with Bowery Presents, who's our partner to bring the music acts to,
Mm-hmm.
to the site and to kind of run it. They're the professionals who run this. So, our hope, though, is to keep music on the site. So maybe it's, maybe we adjust it, maybe there's a
great.
different piece, maybe it's more of an indoor venue, something like that. But we definitely think that music and entertainment will always it's always had a role on the site, so we embrace that. We want to keep that going.
Excellent, thank you. And the biolab, is there ever a chance that you might pivot away from a biolab and go to something else, or?
I mean, this is the core of the Massachusetts economy right now. I mean, when you think about where we've come as a state, the engines that make the economy run are the engines around the colleges, the institutions of higher learning, the hospitals, those pieces. And those group of institutions have generated a huge amount of economic development opportunity in the Commonwealth. So they've taken Cambridge and Boston and all those different pieces and raised that economy up in a big way. So our objective is to have a piece of that come to Suffolk Downs. I think that's the best way to create tax revenue, create jobs, and the rest. The office market today is really struggling.
Right. So it's just a question of finding the right tenant?
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah, correct.
Thank you.
And the tenant, by the way, could come in the form of, these tenants are associated with hospitals. So these are high-end tenants who are associated with all the medical institutions that we know and trust so well.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Garino-Sawaya.
Hi, Tom. Thank you for coming. They all asked my questions, but I have a couple more. The summer concerts that we were just discussing, do you have them lined up for the summer already, for the entire summer?
We do. I apologize, Counselor, I don't have it offhand. So the Avett Brothers start on Saturday, and then I think there's another 12 shows that have been announced. So it's on our site. There's a Suffolk Downs site, or you can access it off of the HYM site. And so I think the concert listings are on there.
Okay, now the restaurants, do you know what restaurants are already coming in there, or?
We feel pretty good about it. I'm sorry, we're under an NDA with these folks, but
Okay.
we want to announce it as fast as we can, so we're working at trying to get them all lined up so we can publicly announce.
Also all the retail as well?
Yes,
All right,
yes.
perfect, thank you.
All the more reason why we want to get that next building underway, because remember, the design of those two buildings we're creating all the streets, everything else, and so they're right across the street from one another, so creating a retail piece, that feels similar to Assembly Row, for example. What was created at Assembly Row came from nowhere into a main street. That's our objective, is to do the same sort of thing.
Perfect, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Hess.
Mr. O'Brien, thanks so much for being up here tonight. Counselor Sawai had asked a question I was curious about regarding the restaurants and the retail shops. And I know you can't say much about that, and your goal is to more or less attract people to the site. Can you talk a little bit about the target audience that you had in mind when you looked for prospective restaurants and retail shops?
Sure. I'd say there's multiple target audiences. I will say, just reflecting for a moment with Councilor McKenna, from the very first, when we started with Councilor McKenna, her objective with us was to make it a place where people would want to visit, local people from Revere, people from East Boston. So the objective is to create restaurants in a city where I think people would want more restaurants. So try and create opportunity for there to be, places where people can have a function or things like that, that would be available for people from Revere. So one, target audience are families and people who, have been here in Revere and would like to enjoy restaurants without having to get in the car and drive too far away. So that's one piece of it. The other piece of it is we're also trying to find restaurants that would be attractive for, a larger group of people who we just want to come and have them discover the site and kind of be here, because that's the other piece, to Councilor Kelly's question, and, Councilor, it's the whole objective here is to make it a place where a commercial business would look at us and say, hey, this is a place that will make it possible for me to attract and keep and hire the smartest people, in our industry, and to find those folks. So we got to create a whole ecosystem around that to make that work.
And thank you, and did you model this kind of after like a marketplace or Assembly Row?
Yeah,
in a sense?
From the beginning, honestly, we do, I should have started with this, by the way. This is a lot of what we do. So we, for example, you may recognize a site called Cambridge Crossing, which is in East Cambridge. So it's partly in East Cambridge, Somerville, and in Charlestown. So it was the old rail yard that you passed over, on the way between Charlestown and Cambridge. It was the Boston Main Rail Yard. We took that over in 2010 together with an investor, put in place a plan, permitted the plan, set the plan in motion, built the first few buildings. Because of the structure of the capital that we had on that, we sold it to another entity, and they're building our plan. We're doing the same thing at Bullfinch Crossing, so the downtown Government Center garage, which is the world's ugliest garage. So we're in the process of, we've completed the demolition of that project. We've completed 2 large towers on that. So we did the same thing with New Balance in Alston. So that campus, which was old industrial properties, worked with New Balance to transform that into the practice facility for the Boston Bruins, for a new life science building, for a new residential building, a music venue, all those things. So we take these sites that people don't necessarily envision as a place where you would want to go eat a meal, and we convert, we change them. It takes a long time, but we love doing it.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Any other counselors? Counselor Janino.
How you doing, Mr. O'Brien? Thank you for being here.
Oh, sorry, how are you?
Question about the, I know in the beginning, when first you planned this out, there was a traffic plan for the area, a bunch of improvements you were going to do as far as the neighborhoods. I know Beachmont's under construction, you're doing Harris Street now.
Mm-hmm.
What's the deal with Bell Circle? Are we going that far, or?
Yeah, so there is a Bell Circle piece to it. I'm sorry, Counselor, I have to go back and kind of review it because it happens in a future phase. But so when we went through the approval process, MassDOT in particular, together with the City of Revere and the City of Boston, led an effort to kind of go through what the transportation plan would be. So there were 2 major categories in that. One is we were asked to make a contribution to the Blue Line, which a chunk of which we've already made, into both Blue Line operations and to refurbishing Suffolk Downs Station. And then there are improvements that we are obligated to make in phases on all the different pieces that we're doing now. So the Harris Street change, which is happening now, I think this summer, and as well as the Bell Circle improvements and improvements on 1A. I'd be happy to come back and do a full presentation on that, because we haven't done that with you guys in a couple of years.
So the original plan, they were going 20 years out on the traffic improvement stuff. Is there a list someplace or
Yeah.
a chart that we could
In our
hold up
MEPA
to look at? to
Yeah,
see what
in our
the deal
MEPA
is?
document, there's a whole list in there, so I could come back. So as part of the MEPA process, there's a whole section of findings called Section 61 findings that are made together with MassDOT and the City of Revere and the City of Boston. If you guys would like, I'm happy to come back and make a presentation on that, which is a more detailed.
Formally requesting that you would do that, sir.
Happy to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, happy to, because, I mean, honestly, I'm standing here, there was a time when we spent a lot of time in front of the Revere City Council, and I know many of you are newly elected, and so, you know, honestly, I think we'd like to come back and just give you that full presentation on everything that we've agreed to do.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Zambudo.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Tom, for being here. It's always a pleasure to have you up here because of your reputation and because of your honesty. And I've heard a lot of rumors like everybody, okay? And you haven't heard from me because I know if there were anything to these rumors, I probably would have talked to you about them already. So the bottom line is the rumors start when there's a disgruntled piece. You know, I'm not pointing any fingers at anybody. It's obvious you've made some changes, and this stirs the pot, and there's always a target-rich environment to go after, especially in this economy. For years, I was in construction in a very small, I never dreamed to be an HYM or anything like that, or a Suffolk or anything like that, but this kind of stuff comes up all the time. I did do some large projects for a small contractor, and whenever there was a pause, either caused by the owner or caused by financing or caused by whatever, it's always, you know, you're going bankrupt, you're done, you're finished, you know. And that's what some of these rumors were. And of course, I know what you've done. I know your reputation. I drive by 1 Congress Street every day now. It's the most magnificent building in the city right now. And I don't know if anybody knows what it takes to put together a project like that, but I certainly do, and I'm just totally impressed. I'm thrilled that you're the developer at Suffolk Downs. I'm not thrilled that they're going to put the burden of paying for this high school on your back, because when I first voted for your project, it was to give a tax cut to my citizens, not to help fund a $500 million high school, but that's neither here nor there. The good news is the music venue, I'm old enough to have been at Suffolk Downs when the Beatles played. And full disclosure, I jumped the fence to get in there. But I was dishonest as a kid. I admit that. I'm an honest, good Catholic today, but I wasn't always. But the bottom line is, you know, in this financial environment, you can't answer a lot of the questions that with absolute honesty, because things change. But I know that your commitment is to have a life science building there, and it's probably a blessing that it's being delayed, because then you can tailor it to the tenant you're going to get. And it's not like it's holding up the project. Like you said, you've already ordered the steel. It's already, you know, it has its place. It has its place in the project, and it's not going to change. I'm looking forward to the retail. I'm looking forward to the hotel. I'm looking forward to the next phase of the project. And I'm thrilled to hear that the next building is going up this year. That's in this environment, that's a big accomplishment.
Thank you.
And if you didn't have the investors that you have, and with the deep pockets and your talent of extracting it, it might be a different case. But we knew that going in. we knew what we were getting. At least I knew what I was getting. And that's why I've been shouting from the rooftops since you came here. And I'm thrilled that you're at the helm of this project. And I hope to be here when it's finished. That's a question for someone up above, but we'll see what happens with that. But I thank you for your honesty and integrity. And I thank you especially for educating all of us on how this works.
Thank you, Counselor. Hey, can I just add a couple of quick things? This is just to give you a sense of how old I am. I think this is my third or fourth recession in my career. So I was still a kid in 1989, 1990. There was another recession. There was a terrible recession in 2008, 2009, as you guys know. So the lesson I've learned is to just keep hanging in there. You show up it's the same, it's like anybody who's involved in athletics, it's the same thing. You just keep showing up every day, be a nice person, work hard. That's the key to it. To put it all in perspective, when we complete this project, okay, in the next 20 years or so, we will have raised and spent almost $10 billion of capital. So it's a significant number, and the objective is to bring that. So if we do that, and you think about the value that creates for this city, $10 billion of capital hopefully produces value that's in excess of that, obviously, right? So that's really what the objective here is, to do this. And there are a lot of good pieces. I don't have to tell you, we've got Blue Line access. We have a great city with a great school system. We have the beach. We have all the other pieces. All the reasons why we spent $550 million to date are still exist, and they will exist for a long time to come. So that's why we're here.
Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Guarino-Sawaya.
Speaking on the rumor mill, I have to ask you, are you going to have a water feature? I heard there was some type of a big water feature that was going to be.
Well, basically what we're going to do is we will take, so there'll be a very large central park where the music venue is now. We'll complete that central park, and then as part of that, we open up and kind of will improve Sales Creek. Sales Creek was in the heart of the racetrack, and it wasn't always treated well by the folks who ran the racetrack over the course of the last 100 years. But it is a great open water feature from our perspective. So, and there may also be fountains as well as we go along, but there'll be pieces like that as we.
Is there going to be a big atrium? Outdoor music?
Well, we'll keep the outdoor music for the next 10 years or so. I think over time, what ends up happening is the music will probably go to a venue that will be more of an indoor venue, maybe a little bit smaller. That's one thing that's happened in Boston is there's been probably 2 or 3 different new music venues that have opened up in the last 5 years or so, and all of them are actually doing pretty well. So we want to be part of that.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Yaramia.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry for being late.
Hey,
How's it
Counselor.
going, Tom? Nice to see you again. Tom, we heard some concerns from Councilor Kelly earlier in the hearing around the revenue piece. Has your team done studies around, sites aren't built in a vacuum, you're building in a city with 70,000 people. Has your team done any studies as to any reverberating effects that this site might have to the economy here in the city of Revere? And if so, can you shed some light onto what that looks like?
We did. So I'd have to go back and kind of find it, but we did during the permitting process. We hired an outside third party to do kind of an economic analysis to say, okay, as we build these buildings, what will it produce in terms of tax revenue? So I'd be more than happy to go back through that. And then I think the city's tax projections were based upon the assessor's office, I believe, reached out to us at a certain point and said, what do you think the schedule is? And so I think the city's tax projections are based in part on information that our team has provided.
Is that only narrowed in to the site, or is that with the other?
I think when we did the tax projection during the permitting process, we did take into account the kind of the rippling effect across the city.
Okay.
But I apologize. It's been a few years since I looked at that, so I'd have to go back and look at that.
It's okay. I think I was still in my 20s when this started, and I was going to your community meetings on behalf of the Senator Boncory at the time.
We did 450 different community meetings.
I was there for quite a bit of them. The other things you mentioned a little bit, and we've already talked a little bit about this, so I don't want you, I don't need you to go in depth. But where's the transition with the GC? Can you give us an update on that? If you don't have an update right now, that's okay. We can
Sure,
touch base offline. But
I'm happy to do that. Yeah, generally, what I could say is, our objective is to build buildings as fast as possible. We, in addition to, this may or may not be something the council wants to, talk too much about, but there is a region-wide housing crisis, so there's a significant amount of demand for housing. And we believe we can build this housing if we get the costs lined up. And so part of what we've been trying to do is work with the team to push hard to make sure that people meet their obligations that they agreed to with us some years ago. And so we basically switched contractors because we weren't satisfied that that group was meeting the obligations that they laid out for us. And so we've got a different group. I don't know if you know Suffolk Construction. They're a very large general contractor, a data-driven company, strong. We have a great team of people with them right now. We're working hard to get this thing lined up.
Great, thank you. And you're talking a little bit about the housing piece there, which I think we all agree that we need to ensure that we have more housing in the greater Boston region. Suffolk Downs is a big piece of that. And I heard you, I was listening in the car on my way from work, so I heard all of the hearing. But I heard a little bit about the cost issues, and of course, we've talked at length here about the interest rates and whatnot. Are there any additional ways that we can increase that profit margin for that site while also increasing the housing production piece, which is so important?
So the key thing on this is it's actually not really profit margin. Here's what the issue is on residential projects, just quickly. So residential projects in Greater Boston, before the beginning of 2023, what you needed to do was to be able to underwrite that housing project to a 5.5% return on cost, which seems like a pretty simple return. But basically, the group of investors who would be in those projects, life science companies, pension funds, those folks, they like the predictability of a housing project, and they're willing to accept a return of 5.5%. So what's happened since then is, in addition to the cost of capital going up, so interest rates for construction loans have gone up, so that's one piece of it, plus the cost of materials have gone up, the cost of labor. 2/3 of every one of these projects, 2/3 are made up of labor and materials costs, those pieces. So all those costs have gone up. But in addition to that, as interest rates go up, then the return expectations of those investors has also gone up. So the biggest hurdle is we went from a 5.5% expected return on cost to now a 6.5% return on cost. So we've worked hard to get these costs lined up. If we get the costs lined up, we can hit that 6.5% return on cost, which means we're in business and we can build these buildings. So that's our objective, is to get people there. So it's actually, it's not profit. It's like a very simple, can you hit the return? You can build it. If you can't hit the return, you can't build it.
Sure. You're building significantly more housing on the Boston side, though, is that right?
Yes, yeah.
Okay.
But back at the time, and Council McKenna, Council Zabuto, people will remember, the objective was to bring commercial development to Revere, where there had not been, sizable amounts of that. So basically what's been permitted is half of the approved square footage can be for housing, half must be for commercial.
Okay,
that's our objective.
sounds good. And I also heard you talk a little bit earlier about the life science industry in relation to Cambridge and Boston and the challenges that presents. But, I remember sitting in these meetings way early on and thinking about how we link Revere to Boston and Cambridge, right? And are there anything that we should be advocating for from this council or putting investments in to ensure that we're making that link either physically? I know that there's been a lot of talk about the blue-red connector and how that possibility could possibly impact the workers you're bringing here into that site, even the tenants. Have you heard any conversations to that effect? What have you foreseen? It sounds like you're working really hard to bring a good tenant. What do you foresee, or what are you hearing, or what are you seeing? Is there anything like that happening or development?
So I think the mayor's still here, and I just want to point out the mayor's been great with helping us work through all those different issues. So Red Blue Line Connector is a great example. We should all, honestly, we should be working carefully with one another. We advocate on that every day, but of course, when we advocate for that, we look like we have an interest, because we do, right,
Sure.
to make this. But people should remember that's an unfulfilled obligation on the part of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts to this community and to other communities here on the North Shore. So that's something we should clearly work together on to make sure that the people of this community can connect to those jobs. The job engine for Eastern Massachusetts has become Kendall Square in East Cambridge. I mean, it happened over a period of time, but that has become the job engine. So people from this community should be as connected to those jobs as anybody else on the Green Line and the Orange Line and all the rest of it. So yes, red-blue line connector is one piece of it. In addition to that, we're trying to build as much infrastructure as we can. So as we build these pieces in, and there are pieces of the governor's housing bond bill that might allow us to build more infrastructure in partnership with the mayor and with all of you. So we probably would come back before the council to kind of give you a sense of that as we go back.
And then my last question, going back a little bit about, of course, you'd work with the city and with other partners a great deal to ensure that Revera's workers are protected on site. And not much of a question, more of a statement, making sure that as you make the transitions and move into the next phases, that continues to be the case. But of course, we've already talked about this at length, you and I, and I'm grateful for your response and for your information. And with that, I yield. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor. Councilor McKenna.
Thank you, Mr. President. I was just wondering if Suffolk Construction is union?
They are signatory to the Boston Carpenters Union, as is Moriarty, so the same, entity. And so the objective is to try and get, so if I can back up a little bit, Councilor. So remember, our vision here has been to build all of these buildings on a 100% union basis. And that's unusual for Revere, if I can just point out. I don't think there's any other project outside of the project that we're building right now that is being built on a 100% union basis in Revere. I don't think that's been true with the exception of maybe public projects. I don't think that's been true ever. In fact, there's a building that's being built. I can throw a rock from our building, which is called Amaya, at a building on Bennington Street that's being built, as you may know, down across from the school. And that building is being built on a 100% non-union basis, while our building is being built on a union basis. The unions bring us a huge advantage, we think, because we get trained people on site every day who also are safety conscious. And so they give us predictability, they give us schedule, all those sorts of things. There has been a project labor agreement that was agreed to by the previous contractor and the Boston Building Trades. It is our contention that the previous contractor and the Boston Building Trades have not lived up to all of the obligations that they agreed to on that. So we're in the midst right now of trying to point out to the building trades that they must meet those obligations in order to hit the costs that we have to hit for this project. If they meet those obligations, then we can build the building. But my intention, this is kind of a sacred thing, my intention is to build this building. And if we can't build the building the way we want to, then we'll find another way to build it if we had to do that, with other tradespeople.
Thank you very much, Mr. O'Brien. Any other councilors? Councilor Zambudo. Last one, everybody.
Thanks for the leeway. I appreciate your honesty again in explaining what happens when someone doesn't meet the commitment. You made a lot of commitments, especially the PLA, whatever you call it, the Project Labor Agreement.
Yep.
And when those are not held to exactly, then the deal isn't going right. You do that for a reason. It's not just to be a great guy and have everything union. You do it so that you can meet your objectives and costs and time frame.
Mm-hmm.
And when that is not being adhered to, well, somebody's breaking the agreement. But nobody talked about that. The rumors that I heard and the stories, the phone calls that I got were, obviously that you're a bad guy and that's the story. So thank you for putting on the table what actually happened.
Well, I would say, just closing, there is an intensive effort that's ongoing right now to get these costs lined up. And I'm very comfortable with who I am, comfortable with my reputation and what we're all about. And as you point out, Counselor, if people make an agreement, then they need to live up to their end of the agreement, period. So that's what this is about.
Thank you, Councilor. I thought that was going to be the last one. But Councilor Silvestri. On record, he's good. Thank you. Councilor Kelly.
Thank you for the leeway, Mr. President. So this is probably just my ignorance in the construction realm of things, but since we did talk about the PLA agreement and that was brought up in Suffolk Construction of Moriarty. You said that it was 100% union under the initial GC that you had, Moriarty. Expectations weren't being lived up to, whatever, so you're switching over to Suffolk Construction. However, you felt that the trade, you were having trouble with the trades, is what you were saying. But then you said that Suffolk would also be union and also be trade. So I'm kind of confused as to how that is coinciding with one another, or what the point of that would be, I guess I'm confused.
When we started the first project, the trades did not meet their obligations under that project. But we started the project in the fall of '22, which was quite honestly a different financing environment. It was a more forgiving financing environment. So we could begin the project at a return on cost that was less than the 5.5%, which was the market number that I just described earlier. So we began the project, and we all looked at one another and said, okay, but in order to get the next project underway, you folks need to work now. This is in the fall of 2022, to line up these costs and get this workforce ready to go and, establish the plan for that. And it didn't happen. So we are working, you're right, with the union general contractor in order to push this process. We needed somebody hard-nosed, data-driven, harder on these topics, to push hard on this topic. And we needed their attention. We needed them to work with us to make sure that they were focused on us to get this done. And that's where we are now. My hope is to still get there and to get this thing across the line. But again, my objective is to build this building. You want us to build this building. My investors want me to build this building. My investors, quite frankly, look at me and they say, I don't understand, O'Brien, if there's an obligation, why aren't people meeting their obligations? Why are you standing still? So we first filed the building application. The mayor's team will tell you, we first filed the building permit application for this building. We had a completed design 16 months ago. So for 16 months, we've been asking the building trades and that general contractor to live up to their obligations. I think we've been more than patient. So we want to get this building underway.
Thank you, Counselor. I do believe we have someone from the audience that may have some questions or comments. I'm going to just give a little leeway. Good evening, sir. Name and address for the record, please.
Sorry, I'm losing my voice. Ed Terrell, 70 Sewell Street, Revere, Mass. I just want to bring two subjects to dovetail all this. The first is, I think I read in the Boston Business Bureau that HYM's largest investor with Suffolk Downs is a Texas oil magnate. So I thought that was very interesting about how we're having a conversation about climate change. And I was hoping that Councilor Wamella would talk about it a little bit. The other thing I'd like to talk about is affordable housing. Now, on the Revere side, we have 3,000 units, but apparently only 60 of them are listed as affordable. That pushes our 40B requirement down to about 7%. I think maybe Tom can talk a little bit about that. But that's another subject I also wanted to talk about, and that's about it. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you very much. All right, if there's no other questions or no other public comment, this is the only business before us, and call for the meeting to be adjourned. Thank you.